Have you ever left a conversation feeling like you really, truly connected with someone, and other times, it just completely falls flat? Well, it turns out the secret isn't always about having the perfect thing to say, it's about asking the perfect question. In this explainer, we're going to break down the science of how to do just that.
All right, let's get right into it with a foundational secret. And it all starts with, a really surprising discovery from a study about something we can all relate to, dating. So researchers at UC Berkeley sifted through thousands of first dates, trying to find the one thing that more than anything else predicted a second date. They looked at all the usual suspects, right? Looks, a great sense of humor, common interests. But the real answer, it was something so simple, and it's probably not what you're guessing.
Yep, that's it. It had nothing to do with being the funniest or richest person in the room. The single most important factor, the number one predictor, was simply the number of follow-up questions one person asked the other. That's it.
So why is that so incredibly powerful? Think about it. We live in a world of distractions, where most people are just waiting for their turn to talk. So when you ask a real follow-up question, you're sending a powerful, silent message that's actually super rare. Hey, I'm genuinely listening to you. And that feeling of being heard, it lands with more impact than almost anything else you could say. Okay, so how do you ask the perfect follow-up? It's not just about firing off random questions. There's actually a super specific, powerful method for this. It's called the echo technique, and it's a real game changer. Just look at the difference here. The person says they're excited, and the standard response is, that's cool, and then you immediately talk about yourself. But the echo technique? You take their exact words, excited about next weekend, and you turn them into a question. This tiny little move is huge. It shows their words were important enough to repeat, and it just naturally encourages them to open up and tell you more.
So this whole idea of really listening, it builds right into our next point, which is all about how to create a genuinely deep connection with someone, and way faster than you'd think. The trick is to understand that every single conversation is happening on two different levels.
Here's the deal. People are constantly throwing out what you could call bait, right? They're dropping little hints. When someone mentions they love to travel, they're not just stating a fact. They're dropping a hook, hoping you'll ask them about it. They want to talk about their experiences, their adventures, and your job is to listen for that bait, to hear the clues about what they're actually passionate about.
So where do you aim your questions? You aim them right at the heart of who they are. You ask about their experiences, their dreams, what they love, their passions, their motivations. You're basically putting the conversational spotlight directly on them. And let me tell you, people love the spotlight.
Now, this might sound a little out there, but a really famous experiment proved this whole concept. Researchers got total strangers together and had them ask each other a series of 36 specific questions. The results were, frankly, mind-blowing. The pairs felt this incredible bond, and in one case, two of the strangers actually ended up getting married.
And this just perfectly shows how it works. You see, the questions didn't just jump into the deep end. They built intimacy step by step. They started casual and fun, then they got a little more personal, and only then did they move to the really deep stuff. It's like stretching before you sprint, right? You have to earn that depth.
Okay, so we've talked about connection, but what about defense? Let's look at how you can use questions not just to build rapport, but to actually protect yourself in some pretty uncomfortable situations. This is your conversational shield. Just picture this. You're in a job interview, and you get that dreaded question, "So what were you making at your last job?" If you answer honestly, you could get lowballed. But if you refuse to answer, you seem difficult and you kill the vibe. It feels like a total lose-lose situation. So what do? The solution is brilliant and simple. You respond with another relevant question. You don't retreat, you don't refuse, you just redirect the spotlight right back at them with a question that keeps the conversation on the same track. You stay in control.
This is the rule you got to remember. Redirect, don't retreat. See, when you just flat out refuse to answer, the other person's brain just fills in the blanks with the worst possible scenario. But when you redirect with a smart question, their attention just follows it, and before you know it, you can steer the conversation somewhere else entirely.
All right, let's break down another really common mistake. Say you're buying a used car or a phone. You might ask something like this, thinking you're doing your due diligence. The problem is, a question phrased this way basically gives the seller an easy escape hatch from being totally honest. The fix here is simple, but it is so powerful. You just flip the assumption. The weak question signals that you want the answer to be no. You're hoping it's fine. But the strong question, it assumes a problem already exists and asks them to tell you about it.
It forces them to actually justify its condition, instead of just giving you a simple, nope, it's perfect.
And now, we've come to our final and, honestly, most counterintuitive strategy. This is a technique that can completely flip the power dynamic, especially with people in authority, like your boss.
What's your first instinct when you meet a new boss or a senior colleague? It's probably to try and impress them, right? To show off how much you know. Well, the research shows that doing the exact opposite is way more effective.
And get this, there's a Harvard study that backs this up completely. They had one group of people get encouragement while they did a task, and another group was asked for advice by the observers. And the result? The people who were asked for their advice were rated as way more competent and likable.
So why on earth does this work so well? Because asking for advice is like a form of invisible flattery. If you just say, "You're so smart," it can feel a little cheap or obvious. But when you ask for their advice, you're sending this powerful implied compliment that says, "I think you're smart and I really value your opinion." It plays to the ego in the best possible way.
But, and this is a big but, you have to be smart about it. There are two critical rules here. First, ask them about something they're a genuine expert in. And second, for goodness sake, don't ask something you could have figured out with a 10-second Google search. That just makes you look lazy and like you're wasting their time.
So let's put it all together. You now have a full-on conversational toolkit. Use the echo technique to prove you're listening. Take the bait and ask about passions. Build that intimacy slowly. Redirect those awkward questions. Assume the problem to get the truth. And ask for advice to earn respect. These aren't just little tricks. They're real, fundamental shifts in how you connect with other people.
And really, that's the main takeaway. Most people think it's the smartest person who controls the room, but they're wrong. It's the person who asks the best questions. Questions don't just gather information. They direct attention, they shape how people feel, and ultimately they determine the quality of your relationships. The right question at the right time, it doesn't just get you an answer. It can change everything.